The story begins in the Roseville Kingdom's second dungeon, where Ash effortlessly slices through monkey-like monsters. Vale fights alongside him, skillfully wielding his sword. Vale warns him to stay alert, and he thanks him for the support. Noticing Ash's skill, he asks about his monster hunting experience, and Ash notes that the activity seems to suit him well. The two dominate the battlefield, drawing the awe of other adventurers. The onlookers praise Vale as the kingdom's premier knight captain and marvel at Ash's extraordinary strength, wondering about his true identity. Vale points out that he is quickly becoming a legend. Ash laughs, reflecting on his past. He is a former knight of the Empire who was recently dismissed. He realizes that this new kingdom highly values slaying monsters. If his homeland had shared this mindset, he might have been able to remain with his old companions. His thoughts drift back to a year ago at a village near the Imperial dungeon. A monster rampage sends the locals fleeing in terror, screaming for their country to help them. Ash then arrives with his 4 companions from the 13th Squad. The villagers express immense relief and marvel at the squad's unique combat style. Later, Ash is summoned to a mansion. The commander praises him for defeating hundreds of monsters and saving the village. As a reward for his martial achievements, the commander grants him the rank of knight and bestows upon him the name Ash Hearts. He bows and expresses his deep gratitude. However, the surrounding nobles whisper dismissively. They mock his achievements, viewing monster hunting as mere cleaning compared to fighting an actual war against another country. Hearing this, a squad mate silently wishes for more recognition for Ash, though Ash knows the monsters would have caused far more devastation if his unit had ignored them. Sometime after this ceremony, Ash stands alone in a garden. He questions if receiving a knighthood is too great an honor for someone born a commoner, especially since he now has a beautiful fiancée. Rafi then arrives, apologizing for keeping him waiting, and he warmly greets her. Rafi expresses her satisfaction with the meeting. She and Ash are bound by a forced marriage arrangement that he could not decline. He pulls out a seat for her, reflecting on their relationship. He feels content and hopes to build a peaceful life together. She mentions the chilly weather, and he offers her his coat. She declines the offer, stating she wants to keep things brief. She abruptly demands to dissolve their engagement, noting it was originally forced upon her by her father. Ash stammers, struggling to process her sudden request. She clarifies that she has grown close to another man. She mocks Ash's newly acquired status, claiming she prefers the other man's looks and true noble blood. Without another word, Rafi stands up and leaves. Shortly after, Mike summons Ash and abruptly fires him. Shocked, Ash asks for an explanation. Mike bluntly states that he is in the way, both professionally and personally. Ash immediately deduces that Mike is the man Rafi mentioned. He questions how Mike will handle field duties without any actual combat experience. Insulted, Mike berates him, warning him not to act arrogant just because he defeated some monsters. Ash realizes this deep insecurity is why Mike avoids patrol duties entirely. He considers appealing the decision to a supportive officer, but Mike smugly announces that this ally is currently away on a mission. Handing over the official dismissal documents, Mike calls him an eyesore and insults his past achievements as lowly cleaner work. Ash walks away, but Mike orders him to return his issued equipment immediately. Enraged, Ash storms down the corridor. He decides he is completely done with the nobility and vows to live freely by drinking, smoking, and sleeping in. However, he proceeds to the armory first, wanting to avoid being labeled a thief. Carrying his gear, he notices people staring at him in the halls. He assumes they are mocking him over his broken engagement. He arrives at the armory and hands over his weapons. Murray approaches and asks about his departure. He clarifies that he was fired. She mentions a nasty rumor circulating that his engagement ended because he attempted to assault his former partner, allowing another man to play the hero. Ash defensively denies the accusation, but she quickly clarifies that she is only joking and does not believe the gossip. Suddenly, Urka rushes into the room. She urgently tells Murray to head to the personnel office. Despite wanting to talk more, Murray is hurried away. Alone with Ash, Urka asks if he is truly leaving. He corrects her, stating he is being forced out. Disgusted, she insults the higher-ups. Ash looks at her, remembering how much she cried during her early training. He feels incredibly proud of the reliable warrior she has become, and leaving her behind is his biggest regret. Suddenly, Urka grabs his hand and vows to follow him wherever he goes. Caught off guard, Ash hesitates. He questions if she believes the recent rumors. She expresses uncertainty, but he insists on his innocence. She quickly clarifies that she believes him and dismisses the gossip. He tells her not to worry, explaining that he cannot prove the real reason for his dismissal. He announces his departure, desiring to rest somewhere unknown. He then leaves and wishes her well. Urka calls after him, desperate for his contact information. Biting her nail, she resolves to quit her position and chase after him, determined not to lose him to anyone else. Ash prepares to leave the country. He returns his rank and gives up his title. He spends 2 days organizing his luggage and completing paperwork. Moving out feels quick but lonely, as his parents are already gone. As he departs, a figure watches from a window, quietly lamenting the loss of someone so valuable. Unsure of his destination, Ash decides to travel far away and heads to the train station. He notices a poster for the Roseville Kingdom. He recalls that the country is economically developed through technology and famous for its magical tools. Since it supplies most of the Empire's magic stones, he figures it is a growing nation and a solid choice. He boards the departing train. Sitting inside, Ash looks out the window. He feels slightly sad, but knows his homeland will function fine without him. Someone approaches and asks to share the seat. He asks if Ash is traveling to mend a broken heart, and Ash gives a vague confirmation. He praises the kingdom for its great food and lively atmosphere. Ash brings up the country's 3 dungeons. They discuss how the kingdom smartly profits from them, a concept unthinkable back home. He notes that the train itself is a product of kingdom technology, feeling almost like magic. Ash hopes for a future where everyone can experience this. After sharing a meal, they finally arrive at their destination, stopping at the 2nd dungeon city. Ash and his travel companion part ways. He is welcomed to the Roseville Kingdom and wished a pleasant stay. Ash expresses his excitement and steps off the train. Taking in his surroundings, he feels overwhelmed by the massive, bustling city. He stands in front of a map, struggling to find the exit among the complex train lines. Someone notices his confusion and offers help. Ash gratefully accepts, explaining he recently arrived from the Empire. He is assured that everyone travels by train here and will soon get used to it. Ash admits he thought trains were a luxury. He learns that the kingdom's stable supply of magic stones keeps fares cheap. In contrast, the Empire relies on imports, driving up costs. Ash realizes the massive price difference feels like a ripoff. Agreeing with him, his helper recommends several shops to make the trip more enjoyable. Ash notes that the list includes a surprisingly high number of dessert places. They finally reach the exit, where a carriage waits. Realizing the person must hold a high status, Ash bows and thanks him for the guidance. They part ways, hoping to meet again. Later, Ash stands in front of a grand mansion. He holds a pamphlet identifying it as the Sorcerer's Castle, a famous landmark in the 2nd dungeon city. The flyer explains that a renowned sorcerer once lived there and attempted to control the dungeon. Currently, the noble family managing the city resides in the castle. Exploring the vibrant town, he marvels at the stylish locals and spots several fully geared hunters likely heading to the dungeon. Someone warmly greets him, but he ignores her, still deeply traumatized by his broken engagement with Rafi. He admires the clean, prosperous streets and the peaceful expressions of the residents. He feels confident that choosing this kingdom was the right decision. As the sun sets, he heads to an inn. At the inn, someone shows him to a sparkling clean room. He is amazed by the bright lighting. She explains that they use high-luminosity magical tools. She also points out the shower, hot water, and various amenities. He assumes this is an expensive suite, but she clarifies it is just their standard room. Resting on the bed, he reflects on the affordable room rate, which is only slightly higher than the Empire's average. He realizes the entire country is incredibly wealthy. Eager to explore further, he plans to visit the market the next day. However, beneath this peaceful surface, danger lurks, as the local dungeons are secretly teeming with countless monsters. The next morning, Ash arrives at the clock tower 10 minutes early. Vale waves and he apologizes for keeping him waiting, but he assures him he just arrived. He suggests they take their time drinking and offers to show him around the kingdom. Ash happily agrees, feeling lucky to have reconnected with him so quickly. The previous day, spotting among a group of Kingdom Knights had brought back memories of their past exchange matches. Seeing Vale among the group, Ash had called out to him, and when Vale asked what brought Ash to the kingdom, he gave a vague answer. Vale considerately avoided prying and suggested they meet the next day. Back in the present, Vale recommends visiting a shop in the upscale Central District after browsing a nearby market. Ash worries about prices, but Vale reassures him they are only slightly higher than other districts. At the bustling local market, Vale explains the area supplies everything from food to hardware. Ash admires a large, high-quality apple. rare back in the Empire, and he buys one for Ash. Ash notes the consistently excellent quality of all the goods, and Vale explains the crops are cultivated inside dungeons, where unchanging weather ensures stable harvests. A government-run train system keeps transport costs low and wheat purchases prevent hunger. Ash agrees the produce is cheap, but notices meat and fish are pricier, correctly deducing that poisonous monster meat makes safe livestock farming difficult. After walking around, Vale leads him to their final destination, a lively beer garden, and encourages Ash to drink freely. Over beer, Ash finds the taste incredible. Vale asks what brought him to the kingdom, then quickly adds he does not have to answer if it is too painful. Ash insists on explaining and honestly shares the story of his recent struggles. Vale listens in silence, then sympathizes, calling Ash homeland foolish for letting him go, though Vale admits it is his gain. Vale's recent promotion makes visiting the Empire difficult, so he would be thrilled if Ash settled here. Ash agrees, noting the kingdom seems easier to live in and has excellent food. Knowing he likely despises the nobility, Vale suggests Ash to become a dungeon hunter. Ash asks for clarification. Vale confirms the job involves hunting monsters and trading magic stones and materials for money. With his skills, Ash could earn well. He outlines the drawbacks. It requires a permit, and leaving the country afterward is strictly forbidden to prevent hunters from fighting in foreign wars. But it makes gaining citizenship easy. He notes the job is easy to enter but hard to leave, yet it still sounds like a dream. He warns Ash about the high mortality rate, but admits he selfishly wants Ash to take the job so they can spend more time drinking together. Vale then pulls out tobacco. He asks if Ash smokes, and he offers him one. Ash mentions having previously quit for someone else, but decides it is fine to start again. He praises the cigarette's quality. Pleased, Vale suggests a drink that pairs well with tobacco, a rare whiskey made from special barley grown inside the dungeons. He proposes a toast to lifting Ash's smoking ban. Ash takes a sip and finds it absolutely delicious. Vale highlights that earning money while enjoying leisure time is incredibly appealing. Ash agrees and asks if he can observe or try hunting out. Vale tells him he can do so at the guild, and Ash promises to visit soon. A few days later, Ash heads to the guild after lingering over a delicious breakfast, arriving to find the building chaotic and overwhelmingly noisy. Vale spots him and notes his perfect timing. Ash explains that a monster rampage has broken out on the 10th basement level. When monster populations swell, they invade the outside world and destroy towns. He details the dungeon's mysteries. Monsters never decrease, corpses vanish on their own, and some floors even feature sunlight and overgrown jungles. Ash remembers similar disasters in the Empire. Someone approaches asking about the monster type. Vale identifies them as over 300 blue apes, moving upward and orders an emergency summon for local hunters. He then turns and asks Ash to join the fight. A worker questions his presence, but Vale vouches for Ash, introducing him as the massacrer and claiming he is just as strong as he is. As the room mutters, Ash smiles nervously and asks him to drop the title, explaining it was a derogatory name given back home where monster hunting is considered barbaric. He counters that it represents Ash's ability to eliminate monsters flawlessly and encourages him to treat this as a trial run. Ash agrees. Vale expresses excitement about finally fighting alongside him instead of against him. They shake hands and Ash promises not to get in the way. At the second dungeon, Vale asks if Ash found good equipment. Wearing brand new armor and carrying a magic sword provided by Vale under a temporary emergency permit, Ash confirms he did and thanks Vale. The team enters and he observes the shallow floors have already been cleared. Moving toward the left staircase, the group leaves a few members behind on each level as defense. On the third floor, they unexpectedly step out into sunlight. Ash expresses confusion and Vale explains monsters do not appear in this area, normally used as a campsite but currently evacuated. He expresses disappointment and he kindly invites him to visit properly another time. They approach the fourth floor staircase, completely sealed with heavy metal shutters. Suddenly, Vale hears noises from behind the barrier and warns him to get ready. Ash quickly figures out his new equipment, twisting a circular mechanism on the hilt until the blade hums with magic. Ash recognizes it as a kingdom-developed composite of a magical tool and sword designed to enhance sharpness, an advanced weapon hard to come by, and resolves to handle it with care. Vale instructs the team to stand back, announcing that he and Ash will take the front line alone, ordering the others to handle only stragglers. The group questions Vale's sanity, but he confidently states the two of them are more than enough. He agrees just as the monster horde begins violently smashing against the shutters, desperate to break through. Vale reiterates that he and Ash will take the front line alone, instructing the others to clean up any monsters that manage to slip past. He agrees. Suddenly, the barricade breaks, and a massive horde of muscular, gorilla-like monsters surges in from the cave. He alerts him as the creatures attack. Vale instantly begins slicing through the beasts. Not wanting to fall behind, Ash charges forward and swiftly takes down one of the creatures. Astonished by Vale Weapon's immense cutting power, Ash marvels at the blade. Vale proudly explains that it is a Magitech sword. Assuming the weapon's sheer force makes decapitation unnecessary, Ash watches as Vale demonstrates otherwise. He slices a monster across the body, but the creature refuses to go down and thrashes wildly. He explains that these specific beasts are incredibly stubborn and must be struck directly in the head or neck to be killed. He drives his blade into a monster's skull to prove his point. Acknowledging the advice, Ash shifts his focus to their throats. One of the creatures attempts to jump him from above, but he easily pierces its neck midair. Impressed, Vale compliments his skill. Ash returns the praise, noting how incredibly sharp his combat abilities have become. Delighted, Vale asks if he is interested in staying in the kingdom permanently, expressing how much he loves having someone he trusts watching his back. They swiftly eliminate the entire horde of over 300 monsters. Watching the carnage, the rest of the team stands in pure awe. They quietly gossip about the mysterious man fighting alongside Vale. Someone recalls a rumor from the Empire about a single escort taking down 200 rampaging monsters entirely alone. They realize Ash must be that exact man, placing his strength on par with Vale. They note that Vale is currently ranked among the top 5 fighters in the country, holding a prestigious title inherited from 10 legendary figures who once tamed the dungeons. The onlookers marvel at how easily the duo handles the lethal monsters, noting that such an addition to the guild could drastically shift the balance of income and work for other hunters. Ash finally calls out that the battle is over. Surprised that they had to do absolutely nothing but watch, the backup team safely follows the 2 fighters down to the 10th floor to investigate the monster's lair. Ash and Vale survey the middle-tier hunting grounds. Vale explains that the truly dangerous areas begin below the 15th floor. Nastier monsters reside from the 16th floor down, though there are thankfully fewer of them. He notes that if those deeper monsters ever rampaged, the entire city would need to evacuate. He realizes that in such a crisis, hunters would be forced to fight, making the job less glorious than it seems. But Vale smiles and expresses his gratitude for Ash's help. Ash admits he is glad to assist, noting he rushed over right after their drinking session. Vale apologizes for the abrupt call and concludes their survey report. They return to the guild. Vale speaks with the staff, promising to submit the formal night documents later. She tells them reward for preventing the rampage. Ash looks at the amount and feels incredibly excited. Vale points out that there is more to come. The staff member adds the value of the monster materials, bringing the total to 600,000. Ash widens his eyes in shock. He realizes he just earned 3 months of his former Imperial pay in merely 3 hours. Ash asks if they need to split the money with the rest of the group. Vale explains that the 2 of them took down all the blue apes alone. Since he is not a registered hunter, the material payout belongs entirely to him. He adds that the backup team still received a prevention reward without risking their lives, so everyone is completely satisfied. Vale asks the crowded room if anyone objects, and they unanimously support the decision. He encourages Ash to take the money, noting it is enough to live on for a while. Hearing this, the guild worker eagerly asks if Ash plans to become a full-time hunter. She begs him to register with their guild, emphasizing that strong fighters are always welcome. Vale chimes in, stating the Night Order wants him too. She mentions having a specific job in mind for Ash and suggests he could even help train his people. Ash feels overwhelmed, realizing they are deciding his entire future for him. Despite his silent protest, his trial experience ends with an enthusiastic welcome from both sides. Holding his heavy pouch of reward money, Ash decides his first stop must be the bank. He feels incredibly stressed walking around with so much cash, paranoid that everyone is eyeing his wealth. Along the way, he spots a postcard stand. He immediately thinks of Urka. Realizing he no longer wants to leave the kingdom, he decides to let her know his whereabouts. He purchases a postcard, writes a quick message, and sends it off. He hopes she is doing well and wonders if she will write back. Back in the Empire, Urka receives the mail. She thanks the courier. Looking closely at the handwriting, she instantly recognizes that the postcard is from Ash. Back in the Empire, Urka informs Murray that she is quitting her position. When asked why, she explains that Ash sent her a letter announcing his new job hunting monsters in the Roseville Kingdom. Mireille contemplates becoming a hunter too, noting that staying in their current squad only brings mockery. She asks for his exact location, and Urka specifies the second dungeon city. Mireille asks if she plans to leave immediately, but Urka admits she has family matters to settle first. They decide to inform their teammate, Will. He suddenly enters the room, stating he heard everything. He announces his own departure to take over his family business. The three agree to leave their remaining duties to the newer recruits. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, the girl gives his new license card. He is warmly welcomed to the association and advised to show the card whenever entering a dungeon. He asks about necessary tools. He is advised to buy monster-repelling smoke bombs and a storage pouch to carry them, both of which are available at the association shop. Holding his new license, Ash steps outside and runs into Vale. Vale congratulates him. Ash asks why he is not at work. Vale explains that he received a compensatory day off after the rough battle the day before. Feeling responsible for dragging him into the mess, he offers to buy him a meal and help him purchase his gear as an apology. While walking, Vale teaches him about the city. He explains that hunter-focused shops are located in the South District and advises him to look for approved signs to find trustworthy merchants. Vale notes that this zoning keeps hunters and regular citizens separated to avoid trouble. After Ash buys the recommended tools, he mentions he still needs weapons and armor. Vale leads him into a shop and greets Carmelo, telling him he brought a future regular. Carmelo assumes Ash is a beginner, but Vale corrects him, asserting that his skills rival or exceed his own. Carmelo expresses surprise that someone so skilled would choose hunting over a stable position. Ash laughs, and Vale briefly mentions his complicated past in the Empire. Ash introduces himself and shakes hands with Carmelo, requesting a sword and a breastplate. Carmelo lays out several swords on a table and asks for his preferred length. Ash selects one that matches the style he used back home. Carmelo brings out 3 identical models forged from different materials and invites him out back to test them. While swinging the blades, Ash observes the differences. He notes that the standard steel feels familiar. The first-grade alloy lacks heavy impact, but the newest alloy offers incredibly pure cutting power. Ash finds the edge of the new alloy great but slightly too light, deciding to stick with the familiar steel blade instead. Vale offers to help him test it with a practice swing. Carmelo gives them permission to duel in the back. Vale warns him that he will take the next round seriously. His eyes turn deadly, and his strikes become brutal. Ash realizes that while onlookers used to find their old matches boring, he is genuinely having fun. Just as he prepares a finishing move, Carmelo interrupts, scolding them for turning his shop into a training ground. Vale laughs and apologizes for getting carried away. Impressed by the weapon's craftsmanship during the clash, Ash officially purchases the sword and promises to return for future maintenance. Noting the weapon's impressive length, Vale suggests they grab a drink to celebrate. The next day, Ash officially begins his work as a hunter. He quickly realizes the high cost of the profession, as gear, maintenance, food, and supplies are entirely his responsibility. Knowing his initial earnings will not provide a lasting safety net, he heads down to the 13th floor to secure a comfortable financial margin. Navigating the deeper floor alone, he stays sharp as the cave's atmosphere shifts. A skeleton suddenly appears and attacks. He kicks the creature, easily shattering its fragile bones. However, just as rumors suggested, the skeleton immediately reassembles itself because its magic stone remains intact. Realizing the stones here are larger and more valuable, he decides to farm the area. He resolves to extract the stones without destroying the bones to maximize his earnings. Suddenly, he hears a loud cry for help and rushes toward the sound. He finds a group surrounded by skeletons. He clears a path to the stairs and urges them to run. To cover their escape, he throws a smoke bomb, quickly filling the area with thick, monster-repelling smoke. Once safely away, he notices one of them has lost an arm. Knowing he cannot properly treat such a severe injury in the dungeon, he declares they must return to the surface immediately. With the assistance of others, they meet on the upper floors. They sprint out to keep the injured person alive. They finally reach the hospital, desperately calling for a doctor to save him. Ash reassures the survivors that they stopped the bleeding and administered a healing potion. Someone approaches and confirms that the potion ultimately saved the injured person's life. Relieved, Ash expresses his deep gratitude. One of the survivors thanks him, explaining that he had warned his companion against visiting the 13th floor, but the lure of making easy money was too strong. Ash relates to this completely, having felt the exact same temptation that very morning. Doubting himself, he admits he might not be cut out for hunting. The other person smiles, acknowledging the terror of the job but emphasizing that surviving is what truly matters. Ash admires their strong bond and begins to wonder how his former comrades are doing back home. Meanwhile, in the Empire, Will bids farewell to Murray and Urka. After he leaves, Urka asks Murray if she harbors romantic feelings for Ash. Murray denies it, stating she strictly respects him as a fellow fighter. She then asks about Urka's plans regarding her family. Urka casually reveals she is severing all ties, leaving Murray completely stunned. At her house, Urka begins packing her belongings. She carefully sorts her items, keeping only the things Ash gave her or things that suit his taste. She soon discovers a gift he originally intended to give his former partner before their engagement ended. Angry on his behalf, she vows to make the woman pay for hurting him. Resolving to comfort him instead, she changes into a brand new outfit she believes he will love. Stepping out of her room, someone asks where she is going. She announces her permanent departure for the Roseville Kingdom. Suddenly, an older man storms in, furiously scolding her for quitting her position without permission and attempting to leave the country. She calmly declares that she is cutting ties with the family today. Outraged, he challenges her to a fight and lunges forward. She easily catches his hand, strikes him hard in the stomach, and pins him to the ground. She repeatedly strikes his face, declaring she will live her own life without any interference. Telling him to consider her dead, she walks away as the household staff frantically calls after her. Arriving at the train station, she bids farewell to the Empire, eagerly anticipating her reunion with the man she loves. Meanwhile, in the Empire, Rudrich reviews a report and notes that the other 3 squad members have also quit. He realizes that Mike, who previously fired Ash, foolishly approved the resignations without consulting anyone. Rudrich worries that the Empire will eventually need to take dungeon economics seriously, making conflict with monsters unavoidable. Knowing that the 13th Squad has a proven track record in monster hunting, he laments losing their exact knowledge and experience, wondering what the military will do next. Around the same time, in the Roseville Kingdom, Vale has dinner with the person who previously helped Ash navigate the train station. The man mentions that they have been pushed to survey the 20th dungeon floor and asks for his thoughts. Vale expresses concern over their lack of capable personnel. However, he brings up his highly skilled friend who recently became a hunter. He recalls his previous praises and notes that this friend is supposedly his equal in combat. Sensing a rare opportunity, he promises to put together a survey plan. The man expresses his gratitude, but questions why such a talented person suddenly became a hunter. Vale explains that he fell out of favor with the nobles back home. He criticizes the Empire's strict aristocracy, calling the situation a foolish waste. At a local tavern, Ash suddenly sneezes. Someone asks which party he plans to join, noting that everyone in the city is curious since he has turned down every invitation so far. Ash insists he is doing perfectly fine hunting solo. Large argues that joining a group allows a hunter to aim for the deepest floors and earn massive rewards. Talon chimes in, sharing a rumor about a named monster appearing on the 14th floor. He suggests that taking it down would make them incredibly popular. Ash asks for clarification. Large explains that named monsters are rare, unusually strong creatures that occasionally appear and offer special hunting rewards. Talon adds that this specific target is a terrifying, headless monster with black arms. He notes that these rare creatures are absurdly strong, recalling a past incident where a different group had to step in and rescue the hunters who initially discovered one. Suddenly, Large stops talking and stares. Ash asks what is wrong. Large simply points out a stunning person walking toward their table. She sneaks up behind Ash, covers his eyes with her hands, and playfully asks him to guess who it is. Hearing her light laugh, he instantly recognizes Urka. She reveals her face and warmly announces her arrival. Shortly after, the two leave the tavern and head to a quiet cafe to catch up. Ash asks what brings Urka to the Roseville Kingdom. She playfully states the obvious, explaining she chased him all the way there. He is shocked. She reveals she quit her position, feeling it meant nothing without him, and announces her plan to become a hunter. He warns her about the strict citizenship rules, but she dismisses the concern. She explains she already severed ties with her family after winning a physical duel against the head of her household. He is stunned by her bold actions. She confesses her romantic desire to stay by his side permanently. Her forward words make him hesitant, triggering painful memories of the woman who betrayed him back home. Sensing his discomfort, she gently touches his hand and promises to wait for him. She swears never to betray him, pledging to stay right by his side until he is ready to open his heart again. Changing the subject, he offers to walk her back to her inn, and she happily agrees. The next morning, they head to the guild so she can get her license. Ash notices everyone around them acting terrified of her. He asks what she did, but she innocently denies doing anything wrong. In reality, she had fiercely intimidated anyone who looked at him the day before, even whispering a death threat to another person nearby. A terrified worker quickly processes the paperwork and hands over the license. Feeling the tense atmosphere, Ash remains confused. Urka simply laughs, gives her thanks, and cheerfully pulls him away to go shopping. They visit Carmelo to buy her weapons and armor. Carmelo asks for her preferred weapon and shows them a popular Magitech compound bow. He explains that the unique kingdom technology uses monster materials for the strings and arrows. He also suggests a recurve bow if she is already experienced. She tests the draw of the recurve bow and decides it feels the smoothest. She selects it along with a matching quiver and arrow set. Ash pays for the items. Stepping outside, she promises to do her best with the new gear. He notes that hunters have more freedom than their old military roles, hoping for a much better life here. She agrees, thrilled to enjoy this new life right beside him. Meanwhile, deep inside a dungeon den, a group lies completely decimated and heavily injured. One survivor desperately crawls across the floor, hoping to escape and deliver a warning to the outside world. Suddenly, a terrifying, headless monster with black arms approaches and pierces the survivor's head with a sword. The unstoppable creature is revealed to be a Dullahan. Carmelo offers to do future arrow adjustments, and Urka warmly thanks him. Suddenly, someone rushes up to Ash, looking incredibly panicked. He explains there is an emergency at the association and begs for help. Ash glances at Urka, who immediately volunteers to join him. They hurry over to the Hunter Association, finding the building completely overwhelmed by chaotic activity. Ash asks what is going on. A staff member thanks him for coming and reveals that the Dullahan has officially appeared. Nearby, a survivor visibly trembles in terror just hearing the monster's name. Ash recognizes her as a member of a top-tier party. The staff member leads the duo to a quiet room to explain further. She reveals that 2 elite parties went after the Dullahan and were completely wiped out, leaving that terrified person as the sole survivor. Realizing this means nearly 10 people were killed, Ash asks what kind of monster they are dealing with. She explains it is a headless knight clad in black armor, wielding a flaming greatsword that cut down the elite hunters in a single strike. She notes it is far too powerful to be on the 14th floor. To gather data, she begs him to join an association-recommended team to retrieve the fallen bodies. He asks if they are strictly doing retrieval rather than subjugation. She confirms that fighting the creature is currently too dangerous, so they plan to gather clues from the corpses without engaging directly. She stresses that if the Dullahan appears, they must prioritize retreat over recovery. He understands the stakes and asks Urka if she is still willing to go. She immediately agrees. Arriving at the second dungeon, Ash assesses their team. They are joined by a veteran party that regularly hunts on the 15th floor and 3 older specialists hired for body retrieval. Knowing there are 9 bodies in total, he doubts they can bring everyone back. One of the specialists explains that, with enough time, they can wrap the bodies in cloth, tie them with ropes, and strap them safely to their backs. Ash and Urka acknowledge the plan. The veterans instruct the duo to handle any monsters while the rest of the team focuses on supporting the recovery work. They agree. Descending into the dungeon, they immediately encounter a skeleton warrior. Someone on the recovery team states that body retrieval is the priority, suggesting they simply smash the monster corpses to clear the way. Ash agrees. He asks Urka if she can shoot the glowing magic stones inside the skeletons. She spots the glowing cores, draws her bow, and aims perfectly. He praises her incredible accuracy, noting he prefers not to break formation in a messy fight. He asks if she can handle the monsters on this floor. Eager to test her new arrow's durability, she tells him to count on her and immediately begins picking off the skeleton warriors. Suddenly, Ash hears footsteps sounding far heavier than any normal skeleton. Looking ahead, he spots a towering figure in headless black armor, realizing the Dullahan has arrived. He urgently orders everyone to fall back and retreat, shocked to see the monster on the 13th floor instead of the 14th. However, he notices the creature is not giving chase. Feeling the Dullahan's intense aura, he realizes it is standing there as if waiting for him. It feels exactly like a knight issuing a formal challenge for a duel. The tension is incredibly sharp. He realizes that a single mistake would mean instant death, but to his own surprise, he desperately wants to feel that thrill again. Urka calls out his name, breaking his trance. She worriedly points out the fierce smile forming on his face. He quickly snaps out of it and apologizes as they retreat. Back at the guild, someone announces they must abandon the body retrieval mission. Ash questions the decision, but the staff member explains it would hinder their survey efforts. She declares that subjugation is now the primary goal. They will rely on hunters to defeat the monster, and if that fails, they will request help from the knights. She asks if Ash is willing to hunt the creature. He thinks for a moment before declining to make an immediate decision. Later, Ash pulls Urka aside to talk. He confesses his selfish desire to fight the Dullahan, telling her she does not have to join him. She quickly places a hand over his mouth, reminding him that he said the exact same thing during a past monster outbreak in the Empire. She recalls how he told the 13th Squad they did not have to fight, but she was the very first to step forward and stay by his side. She points out that she survived back then and insists he will not die now either. He argues that other people did die that day. She reassures him that everyone understood the risks and chose to fight, completely absolving him of the blame. She reiterates her promise to always stand by his side, no matter how strong the enemy is. He gravely reminds her that this time, it truly is a matter of life and death. Urka fiercely declares that he will not lose. She promises that if he dies, she will go with him, walking arm in arm all the way to the afterlife. Ash thanks her. She asks what he expected her to do if he died and left her behind. He admits he planned to leave her all his financial assets so she could live comfortably. She playfully complains that his plan makes her sound like a widow, preferring instead to focus on what happens after they win. He suggests using the bounty to eat something delicious. She agrees, but demands a special reward once the battle is finally over. He agrees, and she warns him she will hold him to that promise. The next day, they draw up their strategy for taking down the Dullahan. The biggest obstacle is its flaming greatsword, which easily melts metal armor and cleaves fighters in two. Knowing that blocking the fiery blade will instantly ruin their weapons, they prepare as many spare spears and swords as possible before heading down to the 13th floor. Upon arrival, they find the Dullahan waiting alongside its army of undead skeletons. Surveying the grim surroundings, Ash notices the scattered, severed bodies of the fallen victims and realizes the true devastating power of the flaming sword. The Dullahan spots them but refuses to make the first move. Ash removes his backpack and begins pulling his spare weapons from his storage pouch. As he draws a blade, the Dullahan reacts, responding to his fighting intent. However, the monster does not raise its guard, honorably waiting for its opponent to fully prepare. Taking advantage of this, Ash strategically plants his spare weapons into the ground all around the battlefield. Fully prepped, he checks if Urka is ready. She confirms. He draws his main sword and confidently walks toward the Dullahan. The monster raises its flaming greatsword in response. Standing face to face, Ash readies himself and initiates the duel. Ash observes that neither the Dullahan nor its skeleton army makes a move. Watching its stance, he realizes the creature's form is nothing like a standard skeleton warrior. It possesses actual swordsmanship honed through formal training. Wanting to probe its defenses and test for the rumored flames, he charges forward and strikes its armor, but his blade simply bounces off. The Dullahan immediately retaliates with a heavy swing. Ash blocks the attack, noticing the weapon currently feels like a regular greatsword without any fire. Refusing to let his guard down, he quickly pushes himself back, certain the creature is just waiting to unleash its flames. Urka announces she is ready to shoot, but he tells her to hold off. He steps in and thrusts his sword directly at the monster's armor, but the Dullahan expertly blocks the strike. Impressed by the clean footwork, Ash concludes the creature fights exactly like a trained military fighter. Testing this theory, he lowers his weapon and respectfully states his name and his former imperial title. In response, the Dullahan formally raises its sword in a traditional salute. Confirming his suspicion, Ash asks Urka to let him take the opponent one-on-one. She agrees, reminding him not to forget their post-battle deal. He smiles at her. Turning back to the Dullahan, he expresses regret that they could not meet as fellow humans, but he promises to survive and pass on the tale of its incredible strength. He fully adopts his old combat stance and launches a precise strike at the right side of the creature's armor. Deciding to wear the defense down, he continuously thrusts his blade, keeping the Dullahan at his ideal range and preventing it from backing away. The monster counters fiercely, its massive blade grazing Ash's face. Stepping back slightly, Ash realizes this intense, skillful exchange is exactly the kind of combat the undead creature has been wandering the dungeon in search of. He reflects that if he ever ends up alone like this fallen warrior, he would likely seek the exact same honorable death. Resolving to grant the creature that peace, he charges forward and delivers a heavy blow to its side. The strike shatters a piece of the Dullahan's armor, exposing its glowing magical core. Smirking, Ash knows one clean hit will end the battle. Realizing its weak point is finally exposed, the Dullahan tightly grips its greatsword and wildly begins swinging the heavy blade back and forth. The Dullahan's greatsword suddenly erupts in swirling flames. Recognizing the devastating fiery weapon, Ash predicts the monster will shift into a high guard based on its previous stances. The massive creature raises its blade and launches a heavy strike. The fiery weapon grazes Ash's breastplate, instantly melting the metal right where it touches. Ash realizes that taking a single direct hit will be instantly fatal. He notes the immense, terrifying power of the Magitech weapon, easily understanding why such gear is strictly kept off the public market. Despite the overwhelming danger, he refuses to back down, absolutely determined to win. Knowing the creature will not attack rapidly while preparing such heavy, charged strikes, he patiently watches its movements and waits for an opening. Anticipating the next heavy blow, he knows the monster's defense will briefly slacken while charging its offense. As the Dullahan swings the flaming sword downward, Ash swiftly slides completely underneath the deadly arc and thrusts his own blade directly into the exposed core. The strike cracks the glowing crystal, but he notices he failed to shatter it completely. To his absolute surprise, the Dullahan immediately halts its assault and lowers its weapon. It wordlessly presents its damaged core to him, inviting him to finish the fight. Ash realizes the monster's logic. If this were a duel between living combatants, that previous strike to the chest would have been the fatal blow. The undead creature is honorably conceding the match. Gripping his sword, Ash bids a final farewell, respectfully acknowledging his fallen opponent as a truly honorable fighter. With one last, clean thrust, he pierces the core directly. The crystal shatters completely, finally putting the Dullahan to rest. On the second dungeon's upper floor, a standby group waits anxiously. They debate whether Ash will survive, noting the staggering death toll associated with the named monster. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo from the corridor. The group braces for the Dullahan, immediately raising their weapons. However, they are amazed to see Ash and Urka casually walking toward them with smiles on their faces. The onlookers realize the monster has been slain and eagerly congratulate the victorious pair. Amidst the commotion, a staff member interrupts and urgently demands to see their loot, warning that mishandling it is a severe crime. They move to a private area where she explains that materials from named monsters are incredibly rare and must be surrendered directly to the Royal Capital Institute. Giving the items away or selling them would result in criminal charges. She orders them to hand over every piece to the Knights and demands a written report detailing the battle and any uncollected items. Ash hesitantly agrees to the strict terms. Afterward, Urka watches Ash closely. He asks what is wrong, and she wonders what they are supposed to do while waiting. He suggests simply organizing the materials. She laughs, finding his casual demeanor adorable. However, seeing him fight earlier reminded her of his beast-like intensity in combat. She reflects on his perceptive nature, immense bravery, and deep lust for battle, realizing he would gladly die fighting. She recalls how he once vowed to protect her, which initially sparked her deep love for him. Remembering his painful past, she feels a brief surge of anger toward the woman who previously betrayed him. Brushing off the bitter memories, she feels incredibly happy knowing he is finally by her side. Suddenly, Vale arrives and asks to inspect the loot. Surprised to see him, Ash lays out the items. Vale praises Ash for recovering the armor and sword, noting how incredibly difficult it is to kill a monster while keeping its core intact. Examining the monster's weapon, Vale realizes it is a genuine magic sword. He explains that unlike their Magitech weapons, which require magic stones to function, a true magic sword works endlessly on its own, likening its power to something out of a fairy tale. Ash is amazed that he believes in such stories, but he notes that fairy tales often contain a bit of truth. Wrapping up the inspection, Vale hands Ash and Urka a blank sheet of paper and instructs them to start his written report. Confused by the sudden paperwork, he wonders what he is supposed to write. Vale asks for every detail of the fight and a list of any unretrieved materials. Ash immediately begins writing his report. Vale asks what the Dullahan was like, and Ash describes the monster as a strong, honorable knight. Vale notes that its armor closely resembles Old Kingdom gear. He hopes they can discover the fallen knight's true name. He promises the Institute will thoroughly examine the loot and report back. Ash hands over the finished paperwork. As Ash and Urka turn to leave, Vale stops them to ask if they have chosen an official party name yet. Urka admits they have not. Ash reflects on his past in the Empire. Ash remembers his old unit, the Janus Squad, named after the two-faced ancient god because they fought both monsters and humans to protect the innocent. Wanting to honor his former comrades and their unwavering pride, he confidently announces their new name as the Janus Escort. Urka smiles in agreement. The surrounding onlookers erupt in excitement, loudly cheering for the Dullahan slayer of the Janus Escort. The next morning, Ash and Urka step outside and find Vale waiting for them. Vale reveals that the Institute found a half-faded name on the Dullahan's armor, confirming it was indeed a Kingdom Knight from the era when they first tried to control the dungeons. Ash wonders if he will meet a similar fate if he dies down there. Vale admits no one truly understands why monsters appear, advising him to leave the mysteries to the Institute and focus on what they can control. Vale mentions the official reward will take some time, but advises them to visit the guild. At the guild, a staff member informs them that once the kill is officially confirmed, their cards will be updated. She expresses a strong desire for the pair to become dedicated hunters for their branch. Urka asks what benefits Ash will receive. The worker promises various perks and immediately transfers a special association bounty of 5 million. Both are completely amazed by the massive payout, which splits evenly to 2.5 million each. Later, Ash stares at his bank book, marveling at the number of zeros. Urka playfully asks if he has forgotten about her special reward. He assures her he has not. After a moment of thought, he tells her how incredibly important she is to him and sincerely asks her to stay with him. Smiling warmly, she promises to never leave his side and vows to prove they belong together. Sometime later, the pair returns to the dungeon to hunt. Ash calls out targets, and Urka expertly shoots the skeletons down. He notices that from the 15th floor onward, the monsters frustratingly begin moving in organized groups. Having fought together since their military days, the duo handles the threat flawlessly. However, fighting alongside her makes him nostalgic. He thinks about his remaining teammates, Will and Murray, wondering how they are doing and if they will ever reunite. Meanwhile, at the exact same Hunter Association, Murray stands at the counter in dismay. She realizes no one from her homeland is currently there. She had spent every last coin traveling to the Roseville Kingdom, fully expecting to run into her old friends and borrow money from them to survive. Stepping outside, she realizes she knows absolutely nothing about this new country and wonders what she is supposed to do next. The next day at a restaurant, Urka glares furiously at Tanya, who stands confidently before Ash. Tanya introduces herself as leader of the Goddess Sword Party and claims she took down the Red Ape before the Dullahan incident. Ash whispers that, despite her high birth, her manners are terrible. Unfazed, Tanya asks what they need. Ash admits they need advice on defeating a giant bird monster on the 16th floor, noting its exploding feathers are incredibly frustrating. Tanya promises a solution on the condition that both join her party. When Ash declines, she sweetens the deal by offering a romantic relationship while they conquer the deeper floors together. This deeply angers Urka. Annoyed, Ash excuses himself to the restroom. Left alone, Urka warns Tanya to stay away from Ash. Tanya casually reveals her romantic interest extends to both of them, playfully offering to date Urka as well. Appalled, Urka rejects the advance, insisting Ash is far too sincere for someone so greedy. Tanya warns her that his strength will inevitably attract others and advises her to act quickly. Urka stubbornly refuses to ever give him up. Amused, Tanya challenges her to a drinking contest. When Ash returns, he finds a massive pile of empty glasses and both women heavily intoxicated, demanding another round. He cuts Urka off and declares the outing over. Tanya settles the bill and finally shares her advice. Aim for the wings to knock the bird down, then strike the head. She adds that with his skills, he should push deeper for better profits and promises to wait for him to change his mind about joining her. He highly doubts he ever will. They part ways. Urka is too intoxicated to walk, forcing Ash to carry her home. She drunkenly slurs that she will never let anyone else have him. He calmly reassures her he has no intention of leaving. The following morning, the pair arrives at the guild. They run into Tanya, Talon, and Kyle, realizing several prominent hunters were simultaneously summoned. Vale enters and announces that the knights require the hunters' cooperation. The Dullahan incident caused a massive stir in the capital, prompting a large-scale survey. Because the second dungeon is the only one where named monsters have recently appeared, the Royal Institution suspects a serious anomaly and requests their presence all the way to the deepest floor. Tanya asks if participation is mandatory. Vale confirms it is an absolute command from the Queen. Vale reveals that Edgar Veluna from the Royal Institution will personally lead the investigation, shocking everyone. Ash notes the similarity between the noble's last name and Vale's. Someone explains the noble family took their name from a famous epic tale. Talon recalls Edgar as a mage providing magical support, and Vale confirms he is particularly curious about the Dullahan. He warns Ash that Edgar is a passionate monster researcher who partly proposed the expedition just to hear a first-hand account of the Dullahan battle. Ash groans. Vale states the survey begins in 2 weeks and advises them to prepare. A guild staff member asks the hunters to stay behind to discuss logistics. Supplies and personnel from the capital will arrive in stages over the next 2 weeks, and delaying the schedule will result in punishment. She clarifies that the knights wielding magitech weapons will act as the main combat force while hunters strictly provide support. Kyle bitterly notes this makes them glorified porters, essentially hauling whatever does not fit in storage pouches. The staff member formally requests the Goddess Sword Party to act as guides and asks Tanya to attend a planning meeting. Kyle asks what protocol to follow if the knights take heavy losses. She instructs them to follow the Knight Order's commands, prioritizing the noble's safety above all else. Tanya notes that with capital reinforcements, a full party wipe is highly unlikely and advises everyone to stock up on arrows, warning that smoke bombs will be useless on the deeper floors. Urka carefully notes the advice regarding her bow. Tanya explains that past the giant bird on the 16th floor, the 17th and 18th floors have incredibly nasty monsters requiring ranged weapons, as close-quarters combat is extremely difficult. The 19th floor is the real problem. The previous expedition took a severe beating there. Kyle suggests that since magitech weapons have improved, they might not struggle as much this time, but someone quickly warns him not to get complacent. Ash admires their caution, realizing this mindset is exactly why they are top-ranked. Tanya concludes they must prepare thoroughly and pray the knights carry the day. Ash asks about the 20th floor. Tanya shares that old reports describe it as wide open with no monster swarms, though it was likely never properly surveyed due to devastating casualties on the 19th. Vale vows they will finally reach the bottom this time, and Ash agrees. Later, Edgar sits across from Ash and Urka, expressing intense fascination with the Dullahan. After 2 hours of questioning, Ash finally asks for his interviewer's name. Edgar introduces himself as Edgar, noting he passed his noble title to his son and now acts simply as Institute Director. Ash realizes this is the man leading the upcoming expedition. Edgar voices support for the theory that the Dullahan was once human, confirming the recovered armor perfectly matches Old Kingdom gear. He then explains how magic swords are created. Dungeons are saturated with raw mana essence, and ordinary blades left in that environment absorb the magic and transform. He wonders aloud what might happen if a human soul merged with dungeon mana. Ash realizes he is suggesting the Dullahan was born exactly that way. Edgar admits it is merely a hypothesis, but believes unraveling the dungeon's secrets will explain the Dullahan, finding the pursuit rather romantic. Suddenly, someone bursts in, scolding Edgar for wandering off again. Edgar cheerfully greets the newcomer, Sergio, and spots Vale standing behind him. Claiming their timing is perfect, Edgar spontaneously announces his decision to join Ash and Urka on a survey of the Dullahan's floor before the official expedition. The declaration completely shocks everyone in the room, but Edgar looks incredibly excited. Ash declares they have reached the spot where the Dullahan first appeared. Edgar observes the area with interest. Ash reflects that they finally agreed to this preliminary dungeon survey and feels surprised that the nobleman has kept up with their pace without showing any fatigue. He notices a lantern-like device in Edgar's hand and asks about it. Edgar explains it is a mana essence gauge that changes color based on ambient mana levels, an ancient relic from the royal trajectory. Ash keeps the detail to himself, realizing he should not be privy to such sensitive information. Edgar notes the mana density here is abnormal and continues to deepen as they venture further. Midway through the 14th floor, Edgar calls a halt. The stone in his device shifts from white to blue, and he instructs the team to search for hidden mechanisms. Sergio quickly discovers a small hole in the wall with a hollow space behind it. Edgar notes the masonry looks designed to seal off an old passage and theorizes it is the result of a dungeon shift, where the structure itself closes off a path over time. He muses that the ancient description of the dungeon as a man-eater may not be entirely metaphoric, as the dungeon is a living entity that adapts by closing off sections of its own gut. He orders the team to pull back rather than breaking through. Back at the surface, Vale asks if they are all right, and Ash confirms they are. A guild staff member approaches demanding an official report. Suddenly, Edgar climbs onto a supply box and shouts to the gathered hunters, offering to hire them for construction work inside the dungeon with a massive reward of 100,000 per person. Vale and the staff member frantically try to stop him, but the offer sends the hunters into an uproar. With the nobles backing, the association and Knight Order quickly coordinate. The group gathers at the hole in the 14th floor wall. Ash confirms he can feel a slight draft moving through. The workers strike the wall hard. It cracks and gives way, revealing a massive corridor behind the debris. Edgar excitedly orders the team forward. Entering the corridor, Urka observes the walls and floors are completely flat and cool to the touch, as if made of metal. Suddenly, Sergio shouts in alarm. The group gathers to find a skeleton halfway fused into the wall, as if swallowed by the structure. Edgar speculates these were comrades of the Dullahan who died during a dungeon shift, and that if even one survived and remained exposed to dense mana essence long enough, it would explain the Dullahan's origin. Ash stares at the fused remains, finally understanding the tragic nature of the monster's creation. Ash asks if it is safe to remain in the area. Edgar assures him short-term exposure is fine and that magic users can easily sense danger thresholds, though they cannot manipulate mana directly and must wait for it to disperse naturally. Urka then spots what appears to be a hidden door in the wall. Edgar praises her sharp observation. Ash tries pushing it open, but it refuses to budge. Edgar suggests sliding it sideways. Ash tests the theory, and the heavy door smoothly opens, revealing a secret passageway with a staircase. Peering into the pitch-black corridor, Edgar notes it is far too dark to tell whether the stairs lead up or down. He wagers the staircase leads all the way to the bottom floor. Satisfied with the data gathered, he officially ends the 14th floor survey. A few days later, Ash and Urka enjoy a day off in the city. They spot a carriage and knights prepping expedition supplies. Urka worries the incoming royal knights might be difficult to work with. Ash reassures her, noting he has never felt class discrimination while working with Vale. She agrees but seems distracted. When he asks what is on her mind, she admits feeling neglected because he spends so much time talking with Vale lately. He apologizes and promises to focus entirely on her today. She blushes. Over tea and cake at a cafe, he notes that eating whatever they want is true happiness. She asks about plans for their growing savings, expecting practical answers. Instead, he reveals his dream to buy a large house with a yard, a place to store expedition gear, and a private room just for her. She is deeply touched. He explains he wants a permanent, safe home for them to always return to if things get rough, and firmly states he wants her there with him. She eagerly agrees, excitedly promising to marry him and stay by his side forever. He internally resolves to formally propose once things settle down and vows to stay completely sharp in the upcoming expedition. On the day of the large-scale survey, everyone gathers on the 3rd floor. Vale announces the formation. Local knights take the vanguard, royal knights guard the institute staff, and hunters handle cargo and rear security. Ash observes the leading royal knight, Marcus Roy Corona, famed as the strongest fighter in the realm and a childhood friend of Edgar, likely sent to keep the eccentric noble in check. Moving through the rear guard, Ash tells Urka to stay alert. Suddenly, Edgar stops and points to the wall. The hidden passage has completely sealed up, confirming another dungeon shift. His gauge reads deep red, indicating dangerously high mana concentration. He warns everyone to proceed with extreme caution. Ash realizes the descent will take far longer than expected. The expedition finally reaches the 16th floor and establishes a base camp. Urka declares it is time for their rematch against the giant birds. Observing the vanguard's freshly killed monster carcasses, she notes they smashed the creature's wing bones to ground them and is confident she can replicate the strategy using alloy or explosive arrows. He encourages her to try if they get the chance. They begin setting up their tent. Talon watches them work flawlessly together and wistfully wishes someone would love him the same way. Suddenly, a frantic shout rings out from above. A massive flock of giant birds swoops down toward the camp.
Here I am.